and how they reacted to the divine mercy this man had seen in his life. That's what this focus of this story is all about. And it says, he did not know, or literally, in the Greek it says he did not know yet. Very unusual verb here. Normally you see present active verbs or aorist active verbs. Here's you can see every once in a while a perfect verb, but here's a pluperfect verb, which just may not mean anything to you, but what it really says is that the action was completed in the past. Jesus had already had in his mind to go to this guy and let him know who he was. He had already manifested himself in the man's life by healing him, even though the guy didn't know his name yet. And this says the action's already been completed. Jesus is going to show up and tell this guy who he is. Now, the reason I'm telling you this is because Jesus hadn't showed up yet. Here's a verb that says Jesus is going to show up and tell him before Jesus shows up. And it says the action's already completed as far as God's concerned. I wonder how many promises you and I miss that are already completed just because we don't follow through with what God says do. How many promises, how many blessings have we missed because we just don't follow through? That's what this verb's all about. It says he didn't know yet. In other words, the man did not know in the past up till he found out. So he just did not know yet. I think it's interesting that God gave us the New Testament in Greek because it is such a precise language, even down to the timing of these events in this man's life. It must have been important for this man to find out. Why else would the tense of the verb be so? It was important for this guy to find. If he just did what Jesus said do, he was going to find out. Guess what? He did what Jesus said do. Even though it got Jesus in trouble, his purpose was accomplished, and Jesus met him again. Well, think about that. Jesus comes to us, tells us to do something, and we do it halfway. That means we're not going to meet him again at the end of the completed task. This guy did everything the guy said, was honest and truthful about everything, and guess what? Jesus shows up again. And it says he did not know yet who it is. And the it is in the continuous present. That's great for you and me because it's the story of I am. I've told you this before. God's name, Yahweh, which is translated in Exodus chapter 20, or chapter 3, is Yahweh. I am. And it says, when Moses asked him at the burning bush, who shall I say has sent me? He said, tell them I am has sent you. And what it really tells us is God is always there in the present. He's not a God of the past. He's not a God of the future. He's always with us in the present. That's what the word Yahweh means. When in our Bibles, in the original language, in the Hebrew, in those verses it says, who shall I say has sent me to free the children so they can march out of Egypt at the Exodus? God says, tell them Yahweh has sent you. Tell them Yahweh, Y-A-H-W-E-H, and it means I am. It is the only present tense word in the Old Testament. Everything else is in the past or the future. It's the only present tense word. So you understand when it's talking about Jesus, he says who had healed him, who it is, and it's in the continuous present. So it's a reference to his God nature. And he's the one that's always there for us. Always. He's always there in the present. Now think about this. If God is always in the present, then everywhere you and I go, everything you and I do, we're really standing on holy ground because he's there with us. He's really there with us. The problem is we don't listen. That's the problem. We don't listen to him. Then it says this strange thing. It said, for the Jesus had nodded out. Now I know yours said, conveyed himself away. But the word ex means out, like exit. The Greek word is exonusin. And nusin, N-E-U-O, nuo means nod. That's what a bobblehead doll does. It nods. Now, I don't know what happened because it's not obvious from just one verse how this all took place. But if you could just picture yourself, and all of us are sitting here, and if somebody came in and there was a danger to us and we could escape, even though I couldn't talk to you, I would do something like this. I would go. And I would start walking. And what y'all would do, you would know that means, let's go this way. That's possible what he could have. He was in this crowded area at this pool where all these invalids laid at Bethesda. And the focus was on the man who was healed. Not on the guy who told him to pick up his stuff and walk. There's a lot of people talking around there. A lot of people, big crowd. And he's looking directly at this guy and he says, pick up your stuff and walk. So this guy hears him and he does it, and guess who becomes the focus of attention? The guy. Not Jesus. He's not jumping up and down praising God, grabbing Jesus and saying, this guy healed me. That didn't happen other ways. Not there. He came to Bethesda. He saw the opportunity that was presented to himself, and that was this lame man laying at the pool. And he healed the guy by just speaking to him quietly, gently. And the guy does what he says. He's healed. Everybody around him knows him. They're all wondering, well, how'd that happen? And as soon as the guy gets up, it says, Jesus nodded out. He just left quietly, unnoticed, amid the reasoning that was going on around this man who had been healed. Because everybody there must have known him. He had to have been one of the oldest cripples there. He'd been there 38 years. And suddenly he was whole. He attracted all attention, not the guy that spoke to him. That never happened before. He became the center of attention. And it's strange how you and I, along with everybody else, suddenly take God's glory, take the honor, take center stage when something miraculous happens. And God intervenes in our lives. The one healed, not the healer, becomes the center of attention. That's what happened. The disciples, though, who were with Jesus, had seen this kind of stuff before, and guess who they were focused on? They were focused on Jesus. Jesus did not have to say a word. He just said, and they all left. Now, folks, you got to be paying attention to get the gist of what was going on. And he said there was a crowd always present. I went to see Nancy and I went to see Vi a couple of days ago. up in Bryan, and she was still awake and there. And it became obvious from the visit that we had that she was going to be dying. Now, what about that made me realize that that's what was going to go on? That's really where we're going to end up. But there were other people in the room, Ben and Nelda, and there was a little bit of talk going on, not a whole lot. I was standing there with some bed sheets, fanning Miss Vi. She was hot, just slowly and gently. And as I began to focus on her, even though there was other stuff going on in the room, I saw her point to the far wall. And everybody got concerned about her raising her arm and mumbling a few things, and none of it was audible. And they went over and turned out this little light in the entry hall, which had no effect at all. I mean, it was dim light way far away. And everybody focused on that rather than what was the real issue. And I'd seen this too many times before, and I questioned it at first, but I began to realize this was the true way it happens, is when a person's getting ready to die, they begin to see things you and I don't see. They begin to see loved ones showing up in their room. People who've died before them, people who have gone on before, whether it be a mate or a mom or a dad or brothers or sisters, whatever. And she was pointing to that light that nobody else could see, that had these people coming that were going to come out of. And that light's been following her around ever since. But I was seeing the angels that were starting to accumulate. That's the reason that song meant so much. There are angels all around. You and I don't see them, but she does. I talked to Ben's wife later on. Ben is her son that takes care of her. And she told me the next day that she had been hallucinating a whole lot more. Now, normally a person goes in and out a little bit at first, and then it progressively gets more and more as they get closer and closer to death, or what we call death. When we were at the nursing home this morning, I told Miss Vi's daughter-in-law, Nelda, that what she was doing was she was experiencing these angels. And Nelda said, I thought so. She said, I've seen this happen before. But folks, you got to understand, that's a fact. That's a fact. You and I just don't see it. You and I just don't see it.